I think there's something that we should really have a discussion on, and especially as it relates to this specific topic. And you might be wondering why we're stepping into it, and I'll get into that in just a second. But overall, over the last several years, I've been seeing this trend within gaming, game journalism, and I find it particularly frustrating to the point where I feel like it needs to be memed on. But anyway, that's a good enough intro. Hi everyone, my name is Brian. We're going to dive into some actually Elden Ring for the first time. I've never played a Souls game. I'm not trying to sit here and co-opt any kind of trends, but what I'm finding here is that what Elden Ring is kind of highlighting for me personally, especially as to this conversation that's going on online, is kind of the hypocrisy, is kind of the thing that I've been trying to say, whether probably poorly, depends on how your take on my content. But what I've been trying to say in terms of data and data analysis and video game analysis. And yeah, let's just jump into it specifically, and then we'll kind of explore some of the thoughts, and hopefully I'll be able to clarify some of my positions for you guys here today. First and foremost, now I retweeted this, and this actually caused some of the conversation. Bo Smith actually, I think, hits this point home beautifully, and that's actually why I'm making this video, is because of what Bo said in his reply. But ultimately, I'm retweeting it with, wow, I love this tweet so much. Let's dive into the tweet specifically. Wow, Elden Ring lost 50% of its players in just 1 month. Rough launch, not enough content, silence from the developer, no roadmap or battle pass. Insight, dead game. I feel like obviously this is a meme. This is, satire, and you could literally like take this, put any other game in here. That's kind of the trend we continue to see over and over and over again, to a fatiguing degree. Following it up, saying these tweets will continue until we curb this bad habit of wielding concurrent player data as a weapon to stoke community narratives about a game's decline. What that does, in my mind, it's very big. Like, you would almost categorize it as clickbait on YouTube, because it generates a huge amount of interest. But this is something that's not just clickbait within the YouTube space. You can see here easily within any kind of games journalism in that regards. And just taking that into account, they follow it up saying, actually, Battlefield, for 2042, one of the highest earning games according to Steam. We could talk about monetization, and maybe we should here towards more at the end of this video, but I want to highlight that. That's the root of this. Why are we so obsessed with numbers? Why are we so obsessed with it, this even in context of a single player game and a multiplayer game? Because there should be a divided line when it talks about concurrence, and especially when it comes down to the data. My belief is, and I'm going to apologize to Bo here because I do want to get to their tweet. You can already see it on screen. Bo says, we'll say that, but having like a piece of the puzzle and then you having to assume the rest, you run the risk of making bad decisions based off of a limited data set. You could come to the right conclusion, and it has happened. In my experience, I've seen people use data incorrectly. They've used data and actually come to the wrong conclusion, and it's cost them their job or the company, lots of money and things like that nature. And so ultimately, I'm very hesitant, and I just try to dive in and ask even more questions when it comes to understanding the data. So note that this conversation will have a single player connotation, and I'll let you know when we switch over into a multiplayer connotation. But on the subject of why do we care about these numbers, I think Bo hits it out of the park. I think I know why the numbers mean so much to everyone, including themselves, because gaming is so bad at the moment. Now, Elden Ring, that you don't see everyone playing it or your favorite streamer playing it, you feel alone, and nobody wants to feel alone. And I think that's kind of a root that could be applied to both games. You have single player and you have multiplayer, and I've even advocated this before, and whether people get frustrated at me for the next sentence, I can't help, but I don't actually think that there are single player games. I think essentially you have like a game that you might play like in a player one mindset, but a other piece of the puzzle, a thing that makes things multiplayer, is the sharing of that. Whether you're on the schoolyard like me back in the old SNES days, or like you go online and you go onto Twitter or onto Reddit and you talk about your experiences with the game. Like, inherently, I think gaming and culture is multiplayer, and it does frustrate people because I tend to, look at the multiplayer aspect because I get a lot of joy out of that. That's kind of why I created this channel and many more. But On this subject though, like about data and about single players, I've overwhelmingly seen that narrative that we've highlighted in the tweet talking about how like these single player games tend to lose a lot of players over time. Now, Battlefield in this example obviously has a multiplayer component to it. But when you look at it, like I've seen it with every major release, and then those are the natural headlines, so much so that it's predictable to me. Like that's kind of the point that I'm getting at, is that I feel like we're kind of also in this rut of hype, games out, games dead, new games hype, out and dead, when ultimately the idea, and that is the point that I try to hit home and talk about in a lot of my videos, is that there's kind of a hype cycle. You'll always have these seasonal kind of gamers that just kind of go from game to game to game. And as my voice cracks, it's just perfect for this kind of video. Real old natural. But that mindset is that a game, especially a multiplayer game or a service-based game or an MMO kind of game, their real job is to actually invite you back in, and their success is going to be measured on that success. A single player game, the job is to get you to purchase the game, because that's essentially where they make their money. We haven't really seen a single free-to-play game because mostly that investment comes into the multiplayer aspect. So we see a multiplayer narrative being applied to a single player game, and ultimately, to Bo's point, like that can help make people feel isolated and alone, that they're also constantly on this wheel of trying to play catch up so they can be a part of that conversation. And then you have the aspect of content creation, which I throw myself in this, throw me under the bus all you want. Like there is an aspect of this that like I try my best consciously, not successfully, but consciously, to not sit here and get you hyped up about every last little bit of whatever. I'm incentivized to do so. I'm incentivized to do that. And I actively have to fight against that. That's why when I get accused of doing it, it makes it even all more painful. It's like, oh, you haven't even seen me do, like, it's a little personal note in this little montage video. The core aspect, what I'm trying to get to kind of in this point, is that Elden Ring is doing fine. Like anybody, hopefully nobody thinks that this is me bashing on Elden Ring. I know it's a possibility because we do live in a headline culture, but perhaps we've always lived in a headline culture, and it's unfair for me to apply, that kind of label to the current situation, because it could easily be a situation that has existed throughout all the time. But when you factor that in, that constantly chasing, wanting that to belong, that's something that I see as inherently flawed within social media. I've seen a lot of conversation around parasocial relationships lately. That's actually what the video, to a degree, the girlfriend experience is about, and hopefully you guys look forward to that essay. But beyond that essay alone, like there's a lot to unpack here in terms of constantly trying to chase happiness, and that is completely defeated the point. The other side of it is that, like back to my point on data, especially around multiplayer games, concurrence can tell you, like I would say, 1/8 of the story. What really matters is the returning rate and the new player rate, and also probably the spend rate. And that's where we get into the conversation of monetization and the risks of monetization, because some people do it well. And when I say well, I mean fair to both the company and the consumer, and some people abuse the consumer in so much that, like, you think of it almost in a term of like you get them addicted, like I'm not calling gamers drug addicts, but let's just use that as a light parody. You get them addicted and then the price goes up. You get them addicted and then it's like, oh man, you kind of start doing things you're not proud of and that you don't share publicly, if you get my drift. And that's essentially where I see the problem. And that's where, when it comes down to it, wanting to belong, back to Bo's point, I think is a key aspect, a critical aspect. When we start talking about games and gaming communities, how you see that these different types of the same, different parts of the same community kind of evolve. The, kind of the white knighters, and then the people who complain about the game but yet never quit it. There's all these different subcultures, all consisting across all of gaming communities and cultures, all kind of with the same driven purpose, all operating off of imperfect data, and all coming to sometimes maybe the right conclusion or sometimes maybe the wrong conclusion. Anyway, that's what I wanted to say. Hopefully this was interesting. Hopefully you enjoyed, and hopefully it brought you something good in your feed today. That's usually the goal here. Sometimes I succeed, sometimes I miss horribly, but anyway, I'll do my best and I'll keep doing it as long as you guys are interested. So thanks so much for watching. Hopefully you have a great day. I'd be curious about your thoughts on anything I shared below in these mad ramblings from this ginger here. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for being here. Hopefully you have a great day. Hopefully I'll see you next time. But until then, take care.
Yeah. It's time to chill out on the couch and read some comments. That's right. You know me when it comes to Destiny. I'm off with a clan, and I'm glad you're feeling better. Oh yeah.